be speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. Now we commence a part 2 of our discussion on the Standing Committee report on the constitution of e-courts and the whole e-court process that in a sense took off with the advent of Corona. I have with me Mr. Mukul Rohatgi, Mr. Vivek Tankha and Mr. Karanjawala. I would thank each one of them for sparing time for the part 2 of a discussion on this very important topic. We'll start with Mr. Rohatgi. The last episode, Mr. Tankha ended his point by making a few points on the whole e-court process and how it has simplified things. Mr. Rohatgi can take off from there and give his view on the same.
Look, there is no doubt that we are still in the trial stages. Much has been achieved in the last 2 or 3 months, but much has to be achieved in terms of the reach of virtual courts. By reach, I mean filtering down to the lower courts, be available to lawyers, because I have found that a lot of district bars and other places in tier 2, 3, 4 cities saying that we don't have a computer, we don't have a laptop, we don't have an iPad. And some of them have a phone which is not a smartphone. So you are not able to connect on these platforms. So that is a very, very huge drawback, because don't forget we have some 3 crore cases pending, most of them at the lowest rung, then the higher rung, and then about 1 crore in the high courts. So at least 2 crores are in the lower courts. So we have to figure out a way that, you know, even if the government is able to connect the courts, what about the person who is the purveyor, that is the lawyer? How does he connect? I mean, if he doesn't have the funds or is unable to have a phone, what will happen to that? I think that is a very, very big challenge. There are more than 10 or 20 lakh lawyers who are practicing. Now, how will they, and if they don't connect and the system is connected, again, you have a last mile connectivity issue. So, the emphasis should not only be on connection of courts by spending money and time, but should also look at those who are a part of that system. They are a part of that wheels of justice. So that is one thing I would recommend to Mr. Tankha and the parliamentary committees to look at that, because there is no point saying that a lawyer should go to a particular place from where he will be able to access. Then he might as well go to a court. So that is one very, very important necessity. Why has not, in the last 3 or 4 months, the government or the courts or together the courts not been proactive in harnessing private technology in India? Why has not that happened? Why we are only at WebEx and the video app, etc. Now, mind you, take an example. We are discussing just now this debate on Zoom. Zoom is not an Indian product. Some say it's a Chinese product, some say it's an American product. Why are we on Zoom? Why should we not have been on an Indian platform by now? So these 2 things, according to me, are important. Namely, addressing the problem of lawyers in the other cities mainly, and why not ask Indian private technology to be available? Because I find that there is some kind of a fear, there is some kind of a resistance in the government. That government must develop. Government must develop all kinds of apps. So that should not be. At least that can come later, but today we need to harness everything. So this is the probable future course where we should look at.
Mr. Rohatgi highlighted a very good issue that lawyers don't have access to things like even laptops. In addition to that,
right.
So you recently had an initiative where you distributed laptops in rural areas of Madhya Pradesh at bar councils and other places. Is that true? Because I heard about that some time back.
I distributed laptops and tablets to students of 10th class and 12th class in Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh who had come first in the order of merit, or the first 10.
So this was not for lawyers. This was not for lawyers.
This was not for lawyers. It was for those brilliant young students who are, and they're mostly, they all were topplers from the MP and Chhattisgarh board.
Okay.
They are from poor families, not very rich families. They're mostly in rural areas.
Okay.
Because the richer ones go to the ICSC board,
Okay.
or the CBSE board, and the masses go to the local board, the state boards. So these are brilliant students of the state board who top.
Okay, so
I mean, I remember. So it was for them. It was for them. Yeah.
Mr. Karanjawala, Mr. Rohit, some important interventions. But how would you react on both of those, mainly with access to technology to lawyers on a larger scale in the justice system? Any of the justice have proper offices, laptop, how will things function? How will e-courts function otherwise?
So let's put it this way. First of all, as I said earlier, and I fully agree with Mukul, that we are a country which is fortunately very rich in technological abilities. We are a country which has large firms which can handle, or at least help to handle, the problems of the hardware and the connectivity insofar as the courts are concerned, and also the connectivity insofar as the lawyers are concerned. So we should harness it to its full ability, and we should find ways and means in which the courts get access to these companies at a cheaper, more effective, better rate. As far as giving access to lawyers are concerned, to some extent, the individual lawyer who cannot afford it will just have to sort of take it up as one of his overheads and deal with it. Because, I mean, frankly, not to be able to afford a laptop as a young lawyer, is, I mean, then you're in any case in a pretty difficult situation. It will just have to be, in the years to come, part of your normal wherewithal equipment which you need. No doubt connectivity should be there across India so that anyone once equipped with the basic hardware can connect. You know, and of course there can be various schemes worked out where the bar councils and all help younger lawyers and things like that, and all these things can be worked out. There is no doubt that where there is a problem, it will have to be dealt with, it will have to be faced. But as many people as can have access to technology should get access to technology. The question is, why should you not invest in what is one of your most important constituents, which is the system which gives justice? It's the third arm of the state. I mean, why would you not? Why would you not go ahead and ensure that, I mean, what is 20,000-30,000 crores in the context of a general budget for the courts? I mean, it's nothing in comparison to how much is spent on so many other things. You have an annual defense budget which is of several times more. And this is a one-time investment made over years. Why should it not be done? Certainly, this is something, and the courts themselves can find ways and means in which to, as I suggested earlier, you may have people who file, who take the e-commerce route paying a slightly higher court fee to compensate and things like that. But why should that kind of money not be spent?
That's a fair. Mr. Tanka, your report specifically because you want world-class court complexes, you know, so much of money is required. Each court complex will require hundreds of crores if you want to have a all-modern. I mean, basically, if I read the report, you're basically suggesting like the IT company complexes that we see in Gurgaon. You want courts like that. Now, do you think, and because you are in the parliament, could you tell us, we have that kind of money, or where will that money come from in your view?
Tarun, let me share with you not only my experience as a parliamentarian, but also my experience, as an advocate general, where I used to see budgets. And now I realize that the lowest budgets that are given is to the judiciary. In fact, judiciary is one of the most poorly budgeted institutions in India. I recollect that when we were wanting to modernize the judiciary in Madhya Pradesh, and Sam Pitroda had prepared a report called Courts of Tomorrow. This is 2010, 2012. We requested the Chief Minister to give a pilot project to the National Law University, Delhi. Believe me, even that money has not been paid to the National Law University. So it's pathetic. For the executive, I find judiciary is the lowest priority. If the judges had not passed orders in the judges' case for enhancement of pay scales of subordinate judiciary, I can tell you this would have never happened. So we as lawyers, as law officers, have a duty towards the institution we are working in. This institution is the place which is keeping our democracy going. It's the only institution in which people have full faith. So if you spend some money to modernize this institution, you are doing it for the country's larger interest. This is how I look at it.
I totally agree with Vivek. Today, in a country as large as India, in a several $trillion economy which India is, if money can be found to build a central vista, in a large amount, and a large amount of money is found for that, there is absolutely no reason why money cannot be found to spend on the courts. And I feel that this is a matter which, if required, the Chief Justice of India, along with his brother judges, should sort of appoint a committee to go into these things, give suggestions, and start the process and start the ball rolling.
Mr. Rohit,
Because there is no...
I wanted to make a comment, something which is kind of not looked at with some importance, and that is this. You see, if the idea is to have a virtual court means that there is no physical court. There is no court in the sense of a physical building spread all over the country, district, high court, lower court. So now what is happening is that the judge may be sitting at home,
Correct.
the lawyer is at home, but the papers are still filed in a physical form in a courthouse. In the registry of the court, there are 20,000 of these courts. So the lower courts, I mean, papers are stuffed. They 1 lakh pages. Are stuffed in different courts. They are kept in very, very poor condition. You know how things are, how food grain. So unless you look at you can't have the achievement in a virtual court, very handing paper. For example, I can tell you that in the Western world, you know, for example, if you want to register purchase or sale of a property, in India, there is a registrar's office where millions of documents are stored in God knows. In the Western world, there is no physical registry. There is no physical sale. It's all on the virtual world, all on email. So you have to look at that. Not just that, you know, by which today a lawyer can't meet, but we are still having the process, all that which is hybrid system is also not appropriate. But in the long run, one has to and a placeless. Because the report says the place or a service. That's how the report starts. So it should be paperless, placeless, and seamless. That's the way it should go.
Okay. Those are 2-3 important interventions, including
One important point to take further what Mukul said, when he said, when you're dealing with you see, the advantage also of a virtual court is that the space that you need for a courtroom is much less than what you would need for a normal courtroom, because this is not a court which is going to be filled with people. So in a normal building, you could probably have 30, 40, 50 courtrooms, while the same building would house, in physical terms, only 4 or 5. So today, if you do have a virtual court, what you have to spend on the architecture of the technological architecture, you would very much save on the building and the space and the other infrastructure around it. Because you just don't need a court in which the courtroom is full. You already have this. These virtual courtrooms would be in addition. Suddenly you could find that the high courts could be manned by so many more people, because you don't have to wait for the high court additional infrastructure to be built for you to have more judges. You can straight away have more judges, house all of them in a much smaller place, have many more cases heard. So as things go along, you will just have to sort of zigzag your way towards a more and more efficient system of dispensation of justice. And certainly I feel that money should not be, as far as the courts are concerned, a constraint in dispensing justice. Tarun, before you end,
yes,
I am in fact going to make a suggestion for you to take a more proactive role. Why don't you just demarcate here and now a date 6 months from now where all 4 of us meet again on this very topic,
yes,
and discuss exactly how much progress is made.
yes,
Let your show be a part of the monitoring process.
yes.
Take out a date, fix it now, we'll all be available. 6 months from now, we'll meet, and we can then assess how much progress has been made in 6 months towards this transformation that we are all talking about. I feel that these tribunals are very easily suitable to the video conferencing facilities and the video conferencing way of arguing matters. Maybe there can be one modification. We can start with one tribunal immediately full time. 2 months later, see and assess how well that is going and whether it's really an experiment that is working out, and then slowly add the other tribunals to the same fray.
I would like to thank Mr. Karanjawala, Mr. Tankha, and Mr. Rodgi for sparing their time today.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.